Welcome back to the show, and MT, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know, full transparency. I just said to MT, Mary Theresa Tringale, we call her MT. I said to her right before we hit record, I go, I got to be honest, I didn't do any research. I did not stalk you. I did not look at your stuff. I'm like, because I feel like I know you pretty well and I know your business pretty well. So we're just gonna go. Are you cool with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, transparency, when I interviewed you for my podcast, I did the same. I was like, I know everything. I know all the
Well,
things.
and these
Well,
are two
most of the
people
things.
who don't struggle talking.
No, no, not at
Like
all.
this podcast episode could easily be 3 hours. Okay. So, certified life coach, a million other things, TEDx speaker, book author, best-selling book author, may I
Yeah.
add. Um, so many titles, so many words, so many accolades. Tell people in like a quick elevator pitch, what do you do? Who do you help? How'd you get here?
Mm. I am a certified life success coach for high performing women. And my biggest mission now is to help them what I'm calling own their bossy, which is really own their life, which is and not hide from people judging them, from people caring what other people think, but not letting those things hold you back from whatever your next level is. And this whole journey of mine, it started with trying to help, trying to help women get out of their own way. And what I've recognized through all of that is that it's these beliefs and these stories that we tell ourselves that don't belong to us, that other people may have ingrained either through when we were growing up, from experiences we had as children, or even as teenagers or young adults, or even that's generational. So things that our parents passed down to us, or our trauma, our generational trauma can go back 3, 4 generations. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing is about helping women discover those stories so that they can rewrite them, figure out where they really came from, who they actually belong to, and start to figure out new stories that are way more empowering, but utilizing daily consistent habits to open up the space in order to do that.
Yeah. What has been one of the biggest stories that was holding you back that you've kind of unpacked and worked on?
Well, one block that I just discovered most recently, and I say this as somebody who has always been called very brave, very courageous. Um, I've been deciding for a long time, my whole life since I was a teenager, that, oh, that's something that I want and I'm going to go get it. And usually when there's some sort of clear blueprint, like do this and you're going to get an A, do this and
Mhm.
you're going to get elected, do this and you're going to be able to speak on a stage, I can say, oh, clear blueprint. I can go and do that step after step after step to get there. When you're building a business and so much of what you're doing comes down to belief in yourself and keeping the faith and keeping going and not stopping when you don't get the results right away, and when everybody isn't in your DMs telling you how awesome you are every single second, you have to there's a huge mindset game that you have to play. And the biggest block that I've come to understand standing in my way, that I'm currently working through right now, is that I don't have what it takes to hit the next level, whatever that might be.
Mm,
Even though I've done all the things that you've mentioned, the
yeah.
TEDx talk, the book, now 2 years of being on my own, being solely responsible for my own income and being able to maintain this business by myself. I've done all of that, but there's still this story of I don't have what it takes. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. And I'm
Yeah.
working through all of it. And when it's I don't have what it takes, that mindset holds me back from taking the action that needs to be taken, or believing in the action I'm doing is enough,
Hmm.
or taking the time to learn how to do things correctly. My fixed mindset shows up and says, like, well, you weren't born with this natural ability for messaging, or you weren't born with this natural ability for style. like what I'm wearing and whatever it might be. I have this fixed mindset that it's not something I can learn.
Sure.
And so therefore I hold myself back from even taking the opportunity to learn.
Interesting.
And yeah, so that's been, I've noticed, and I don't think I would have recognized that block without maybe some other shifts that I've made. Some
Yeah.
other shifts I've made is like feeling like the hustle is the only way.
Mhm.
That's been one I've had to overcome. Um, and just that, like, I get to have this life
Mm,
because I very much grew up with middle class parents who, my mother grew up very, very poor. So she has this mentality of we are not the type of people who get to have big, abundant, ridiculous lives. And then
right.
also my dad, who, oh, I think the entrepreneur, he always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but never felt safe enough to take the leap or risk it. Just that his whole story was that it's too hard to figure out.
Hmm.
And so it's been a lot of working through all of that stuff to be like, no, I am the type of person. We are the type of people. I do get to have that thing.
Yeah.
But those stories are the things that create the actions, or the create the emotions, which create the actions, which create the results. So,
So I have a two-part question. I want to break it down so that we don't miss either part. So the first part of it is, how do you start to recognize, and I say you collective, so for the listener, how do we
yeah.
start to actually recognize that there is a block or a story? Like, are there symptoms? Are there signs? Like, what are we
Mhm.
seeing that's coming up to say, oh shoot, that's a thing. I can work on that if
There's
I choose
something.
to. Yeah.
So, I would say, do you have a desire inside of you, a passion, that keeps popping up, right? Like I call it the nudge. That's kind of like, hey, hey. And before we met through, I was doing event coaching and an event, and I swear to God, I thought events was my future. I thought I was going to be this big event producer. I was going to do music festivals all over the world and
Mhm.
big impactful conferences. I thought that was my future. And in 2019, I went through my own life transformation. You witnessed it all. And all of a sudden, I started getting these nudges of maybe it's time you do something else. Maybe this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. And I ignored it every single time. And there was a block there that was holding me back from even considering it. So I would say that's one thing. If you are feeling a nudge that should be doing something else, that people are coming to you and saying, "Hey, can you help me with this thing?" and you think, "Oh no, I can't help you with that." There's there's a block there. There's a story that you're creating about that situation that is saying that is holding you back from even
Yeah.
going, "Hmm,
Would you say it's like the logical brain
hmm."
kicking in, giving you all the reasons why you can't?
Yeah, or your ego trying to
Yeah.
keep you safe,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if logical brain and ego are the same for you, but I will tell you the story that came up for me was nobody will take me seriously. That's not a real career.
Mhm.
I don't actually know what I'm talking about, or I don't really have anything to offer. And my whole life, I had all these people yapping around me about how ridiculous somebody like Tony Robbins was. And so I was like, so if I become somebody like what Tony Robbins does, nobody will take me seriously. And I was so driven by people taking me seriously and thinking that
Yeah.
what I was doing was really cool, and especially when my career was in New York City, I loved being able to say that I worked for magazines and that I
Sure.
was meeting all these and people were impressed by that. And I was like, if I become a life coach, I'll become a joke. And so those were the stories that I was telling about myself, but I didn't know why I didn't know that was the story I was telling myself. I just knew that no, that's not for me, until I got that it was just when I joined Empower, it was like, you're supposed to be doing something different.
Mhm.
We don't know what it is yet, but you're supposed to at least let yourself be on the journey to discover what that might be.
Yeah.
And so it really was like a train coming and hitting me like, you're selling the wrong thing. I got that message loud and clear one day. And and I got to tell you, I told people this in the past, but my mother helped me pay for
Yeah.
Empower. So no shame to anybody who has to ask for support to make investments. But the reason I remember we went out for dinner one night and I was like, Mom, I have so much to share from what I've learned from my experience. And there's people asking me for help. And she said, I don't know if I've ever told you this. She goes, well, wouldn't it, you know how they do adult ed for like the town rec does adult ed so you can learn word and you can
Yeah.
learn knitting and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And she was like, it would be great if you had some kind of classroom where you could teach all the things that you learned, but it was online. I was like, Ma, that is the best idea you've ever had. And
Oh,
then I was like,
wow.
you know what? My friend Jess will actually teach me exactly how to do something like
No
that.
way.
And that's when she was like, I was like, that's when I booked my call with you. And
No
I was
way.
like, do you think you could help me with that? And she was like, yeah. And I said, and if it doesn't work, then I'm going to find a more lucrative job
Wow.
and this will be it. And that's how I got her on board. So
Oh, Mama
advice out there, get,
Tringale.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. I knew that she had
Yeah.
helped you when you joined, but I didn't
Yeah.
know that she kind of was like nudging you to this cool idea. She had
Well,
this progressive idea she had to do it online in this classroom.
I'm just thinking
Just
imagine if you
thinking.
could do it online. I was like, what an idea, Lorraine. You are so smart. Oh my God.
It's not. Mary, geez, where are you from? Come on.
Mm,
Could you hear it?
yeah.
Wait, a quick sidebar for those who don't know. Mary is yeah, I mean an OG client of mine. You came through Empower in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's never left. She's been coaching with us for 4 years, which is incredible. She's been one of our head coaches for a couple of years now. She helps run the whole program. She has inserted so many amazing um,
Mm,
uh, systems and strategies and just things that we do inside of Empower that make it really unique and special. So Coach MT in the house. That's yeah. And the fun
thanks
thing,
for
which we have
having.
shared publicly, is I originally had hired you back at the end of 2018 into 2019 to help me host an event in New York City. And then you ended up
Mm,
hiring me. And so the relationship has just been blossoming for many,
mm,
many years. But you were talking about this whisper, this nudge. And I remember when you were in Empower and you first were coming in for event planning and
mm,
you were getting the whisper yourself. Your mom was kind of leaning into it. All these things were happening. And I will say that I was also one of those people where I'm like, wait, why are you doing event planning? This doesn't make any sense. Like, obviously you're really good at it. I have a guest coaching call from you teaching event planning for something.
yeah.
I think it's still in the portal. But it was so clear and obvious to me as an outsider, like
Mm,
MT, you have so much other stuff that you can offer people and the natural like magnetism that people were already asking you for these other things like life coaching and specifically at the time it was accountability. You
yeah.
had done like 45,000 rounds of 75 hard back to back and there was like this huge just shift in how you were showing up in your own life and on social media and it was
Mhm.
literally magnetic. People were like, I need you to help me be accountable. Like, how do I stick to my goals? How do I own my bossy? How do I get to the next level? And it's been years of that. And so for me, looking back now, I'm like, well, duh, of course you're here now doing all these things with all these other certifications, which we'll talk about EFT tapping, time technique, hypnotherapy, NLP, right? Like all you have all of
Mhm.
them. Um, but I just think it's so powerful. It's like you can't read a prescription bottle from the inside. And you were inside and I was outside like, hello.
Hello. Well, I think that is just such a great testament and the reason why coaching is so important.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was first on this journey and I was like, okay, now I felt so qualified to talk about events because that had been my whole life.
Yeah.
And I had done that professionally. I had bossed a shit ton of men around in the magazine industry telling them all what to do with events. So I just felt and having really successful events that brought in money, the events that elevated brands like Porsche and we did a tourism thing around Texas, like for Texas tourism. I've worked with really big brands, and so I just felt way more qualified to do events. But it was so hard. It just felt so hard. And I just thought, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, why is it so hard? Hard for me to show up, hard for me to show my passion for it, hard for me to enjoy this.
Yeah.
And the second that I allowed myself to consider I had something else to offer, I what I also realized is that I've actually been doing this way longer than I've been getting paid for it. I was always the one that my friends came to in college when they needed somebody to ground them. That word grounding, I didn't even know what that meant. But now that I reflect back, I'm like, oh, I'm the one that people came to when they were like, I just need to talk to somebody right now. And I need to be held, and I need space for me to say all the things I don't want to say in front of other people. And I need somebody who's going to hold that space for me without judgment. I've been doing this for a really long time. My my first round of the Align and Empower project had 7 women. 3 of them I had worked with at Buffalo Wild Wings when I was a bartender, and
Wow.
one of them was, no, I'm sorry, 2 of them were I worked with. One was a bar regular.
Wow.
And all 3 of them, I used to walk up to I used to walk up to them and be like, "What are you doing? What do you do? What's the plan? You're not going to stay at Buffalo Wild Wings forever, are you?" And they were
Forever.
like, "Are you?" And they'd be like, I don't, but I was coaching them, and I
Yeah.
didn't, without their permission, but kind of, they didn't ask me for that. And
Unsolicited.
I know that now I have to ask for permission to give advice like that. But um, that's what I was doing the whole time. And one of the girls has stuck around, like I've stuck around for for Empower. She's stuck around for Align and Empowered. And I always say, I was coaching her before I was coaching her, and that's why she joined, because she just was like, oh, I remember sitting at the bar and having her pump me up and feeling so much better after I
Yeah.
left. And um I think that the nudge was happening, but I didn't, and maybe that's the bigger story that I had, that I needed to power through, was that I actually did have something to share into the ad. And we did start as an accountability coach because I wasn't certified, right? It's
Mhm.
important that if you are saying you're a life coach, that you're certified and you actually have the training in it. But the accountability and mindset piece, that's not regulated. So I did, but that's what everybody was coming to me for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I will never forget the COVID hit right as we were getting started. I think we had our welcome call and then one more call. And then all of a sudden, the world was falling apart. And one of the things you said to us was, everything you thought about business is about to change. So, whatever you thought you were going to do here, I want you to think about the people, this ideal client, because we do that right at the beginning. What do they need most of all right now? And I said, well, everybody needs to get out of their house. So let's do a walking challenge. And I started this Facebook group, and 400 people entered. And in Maine, that's like a third of the population.
Yeah. That's the whole state.
That's the whole state. It's everybody. And we did 7-day walking challenges. But what I was doing was, every day I was showing up, and every
Yep.
day I was sharing with them different nuggets of mindset work that I had worked through. And because walking every day had been the tool that I utilized that had changed my life, I think, among all the other things that I had been doing. And it truly was, it changed a lot of lives. And people were part of that Facebook group in 2020 that signed up for my first round, second round, third round, because we had done that. And
Yeah.
because you had asked me to shift my perspective of how can I help right now, they were the ones saying, thank you so much for the accountability. This is keeping me going. And then that's when I was like, oh shit, I think I'm a accountability
Goosies.
coach.
I have goosies.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So my second question, because the first one was sort of like, how do you recognize a block? The second question then is obviously the most important one. How do we
Right.
work
What do you
through
do?
it? What do we
Right.
do? How do we get through it? Are we like, is it journaling? Is it something like EFT tapping? Is it just crying? Is it pushing
I
it into
think
the
it's all
closet and
yeah.
pretending it's not there? Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing? How do we do it?
I just made a face. No, the answer is no. We do
Oh, we
not
don't
push
put it
it
in the
in.
closet?
Don't put it in the closet, ignore and pretend that it doesn't exist. So I actually like to say your emotions are like a 3-year-old child. And if you try and tell a 3-year-old child, which I don't have a 3-year-old child, but I have nieces and nephews, and I've hung out with a lot of them. If you're just like, get out of here, go away, 3-year-old, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. Just get out of here. Does the 3-year-old listen?
No, not going to be happy.
The answer is no. They stand there and they go, hey, 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 I have something to tell you. 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 And a lot of other people who work in this space will tell you first it starts as a whisper and then it's like a punch in the face. Then it's like a Mack truck. When one of my favorite sayings is what you resist persist. So these emotions, these thoughts, these nudges, they're not going anywhere. And especially they need some attention. They need to be paid attention to. So we don't just throw that stuff. And this is for negative thoughts and beliefs as well, not just the nudges that are coming up and being like, hey, 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 hey. But what I like to say is that you're never going to be able to see truly what the story is and the root cause story, not just the cover story that we're using as like the nice reason why we're not taking action. There's usually something deeper that sometimes we don't want to admit to. You're never going to find that stuff unless you give yourself capacity to go within and get uncomfortable to discover what those stories are. Because if it was a story that made you comfortable, you'd be living in it. Usually the limiting beliefs and the blocks are the stuff that make us that we don't want to admit to, we don't want to lean into, that make us super uncomfortable. They mean that if we follow through, we're going to have to take a risk, whatever it might be. So you have to create that capacity to even see it and then to work through it. So there's a process of that I like to do in journaling. So journaling, EFT tapping is huge. I think that EFT tapping is a huge asset and tool for discovering what these limiting beliefs are,
Mm.
because EFT tapping, I mean, we can get into that later, but it holds you in your discomfort and it regulates your nervous system while you're getting dysregulated. So it kind of like when you're tapping on certain meridian points, you're creating the regulation in your body that your mind needs in order for it to even open up in any way, to be vulnerable, to see what's going on, to discover something that maybe your ego doesn't want you to discover. And so the first thing to say is, "Ooh, I hear this. I feel this nudge. What is that? I'm feeling the nudge. I'm hearing the whisper. People are showing up all around me." Getting curious
Yeah.
about what that is. What does that mean? You don't have to have the answer right away. Sometimes the answer is going to very clearly be there for you,
Hmm.
but just getting curious, I would say, is the first step. What does that mean? Write it down. What is the thought that you heard, even if you're not ready yet to dig in? Then you have to consciously create space. So walking has been a huge tool of mine. I think the first time I felt what alignment felt like was on a walk. EFT tapping has become a huge asset for me and my clients. Um, I think that hypnotherapy is super powerful if you have the right one to kind of open up that space for you, especially hypnotherapy matched with breath work.
Hmm.
Um, but journaling is such an easy tool that you can access anytime. I mean,
Do
EFT
you
is
use
also
prompts
free.
when you journal?
Sometimes I don't. Prompts don't always work for me, but I know that I need really basic prompts
Mhm.
if I'm going to use a prompt, but like prompts that are very specific don't always work for me. And I think that there's I think the practice of journaling will help you discover what's deep it
Yeah,
within. Now, when I say journaling, I don't mean dear diary,
sure.
here's the day that I had today, which I think is a way that a lot of people utilize journaling. And when I'm talking about journaling, I'm talking about utilizing it as a fear inventory and then utilizing it to help you rewire those fears.
So writing down things that are coming up for you that you're fearful of or like limiting beliefs
Yeah.
and then working on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So there's different ways you can do that. And but I the three prompts that I use is what are my desires? So here are the things that I want, and that's a
Chocolate and
really
peanut
great way
butter.
to get gross peanut butter. Anyway, we've
You don't
had
like
this
dogs or
discussion.
peanut butter. I don't know. I don't know how you're on the team.
I don't every time I remind you of these facts, you are
Question.
just like so
Question.
appalled. And I'm like, why
How'd
haven't you
you get
gotten
here?
over this yet?
I don't- Okay, so
And I
desires.
desires. Desires and then it's like I want let's just say a 50K cash month.
Mhm.
Then what comes up? What are all the fears, the limiting beliefs that come up? What are all the reasons why
Yeah. Yeah,
I
but I
can't?
can't, but yeah,
That's right.
totally.
Well, nobody likes me enough. I'm not pretty enough. I don't have the messaging. I'm not smart enough. And
Mhm.
all of these things matter, even if every single day there's still the limiting belief that pops up, because someday you're going to say it and it's going to be like, no, wait a minute. That doesn't have the charge that it used to have because you
Well,
have spent time reframing it and reworking it.
I'm curious your thoughts because I do so much Joe Dispenza work. And when I hear you say that, it doesn't have the charge. The way that I look at it,
Mm,
because there's like the science and there's the woo, and sometimes it gets confusing for people and we're not really sure. The way that I see it, it's kind of like you say, sometimes we say these things, right? Like in our head or out loud or whatever, it's our ego. We say these things like, I don't have enough followers. I'm not pretty enough. I fill in the blank. And there comes a point, I believe, in the journey of unblocking where you consciously know that that's not true, but your
mm,
subconscious has not caught up yet. And that's where the work still gets to be done because there's still a charge, as you said. So
right,
like the subconscious isn't there yet, but like your
right.
conscious mind is like that. I know that's not true. I know I don't need
Yeah,
to be prettier. I don't need a lot of followers. I have evidence of other people doing it with less followers than me or fill in the blank. But the subconscious mind is still like the gremlin
yeah,
telling you these stories. And so that's where it's like, okay, cool. We get to go dig. We get to dig. We get to go deeper.
right.
And one of the questions I did have for you though is when unblocking a particular story, is there a certain amount of time that it takes or reps that it takes? 14.5 journaling sessions and you'll be healed. Like, is it's going to take 6 months? Is it the bigger the story, the longer the time, the deeper the story, the more generational the story? Like, is it just keep working on it
Mhm.
until it's dissolved? Like, what does that look
Yeah.
like?
Well, isn't that funny? Because what came up for me when you were asking that was what I hear from my clients all the time, and I'm sure you've heard it too, which is, I thought I already fixed this. I thought I already
Never.
worked
I've
through
never
this.
heard that.
I thought I've never said it. I'm like, what? This is coming up again.
Yeah.
So I would say that the most important thing to know is that there is no time limit on growth. And there's no it's there is no set number. We all are on our own journey. And I would say that sometimes I'll realize the block and instantly the story doesn't have the hold on me it used to. And when I say that charge, the hold, that it's the thing that's making my nervous system go into dysregulation, which makes me go into safety mode, which makes me go into a freeze or playing small or scrolling
Yeah.
or doing anything else except taking the action or not taking the action that actually will move the needle, but taking action that feels way safer.
Mm.
So I think that there's stuff that if you had told me when I was in high school and I was going after this crazy thing that nobody in my high school had ever done before, and I was just so sure that I was going to have it and I got it. If you had told me back then, well, your limiting belief is that you're not pretty enough, Mary, I would have been like, that is not something that's holding me back today. But as a 30-something-year-old or a 40-year-old, why is that story holding me back today?
Right. Isn't
Right?
that
So it's
funny? They
kind of
come back
like,
around.
that's right. And what I like to say is just it's another layer of the onion. It's same story, different level.
Yep.
And I just work through it way faster. I get to the other side of having to reframe or recognizing that that story is holding me back. I just get there faster. I move through it faster. I take action faster. And I know who to ask for support
Mm.
faster. So I don't know that there's ever
And that's the
the
game, isn't
chart.
it?
Absolutely. And I say this to my clients all the time, whether you're in the corporate world or you're building your own business, anybody you're looking at who's ahead of you, they just figured out how to get there to work on the same stuff way faster.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I have a client who works at a big social media company that we can't say, that I can't officially say, but she's had they've brought in a lot of women who are higher up in the company to tell, this mid-level um, corporate girly, if you will, what it's taken for them to get to that higher level. And she'll message me and say, just wanted to let you know, yet another person who I look up to told me today that it's their daily habits, it's
Yeah.
their mindset work, it's their going to bed, it's their getting enough sleep, it's their shutting off so that they're not working every single day. It's putting up boundaries. And she's like, just wanted you to know. It's like,
Well, I'm curious, you teach both. So in your business, you're not teaching business coaching, but because you've been working in our business as well for 4 years, you're phenomenal at teaching business. And what we teach and empower is you said earlier, the blueprint. It's structured. It's a
mhm,
framework, it's a blueprint, it's plug and play, it's school. It's literally we're on chapter
yeah,
1, chapter 2. It's very strategy heavy. Now
yeah.
with that, all of the coaches inside of Empower also have a lot of us have NLP and all these other things. And so, like, a lot of us do have that. We have a mindset coach on staff. So, we do bring that to the table. I'm curious because you did say earlier as well that you had to rewrite a story about hustle. And I feel very strongly about hustle and the word hustle. And I disagree with anti-hustle culture. I think the
Mhm.
pendulum has swung too far because you can't just sit around and manifest and you can't just work on your mindset. Like you have to take aligned action. So there's a
Yep.
blend and the pendulum just has swung too far, which is what always happens. It was too far to one side, now it's too far to the other. And like the reality is it needs to live in
In
the
that
middle.
middle. Yeah.
So when it comes to the mindset work, the unblocking, the subconscious, the rewriting of the stories, and the aligned action steps that you have to take, what do you see as sort of like the percentage of how much is important? And are there seasons where it's like, okay, for this
Mhm.
season, I really need to be doing more of this mindset unblocking because I'm stuck, I'm not moving.
Yep.
And then I come back into maybe a heavier, we don't have to call it hustle, but like a strategy work season. And it kind of toggles and oscillates
Yeah.
between like, where do you see it falling?
Well, I want to be clear on when I say the hustle, I say that I
You're
had a
talking about the
belief.
dance move, aren't you? Do, do,
Well,
do, do,
besides
do, do,
that,
do,
you
do,
know how
do,
much
do,
I love
do,
to
do, do, do. MT
bust a
is a
move.
great dancer.
Thank you. I receive. Um, when I say the hustle, I go back to that story of, well, if I have the blueprint, I'll find the success. And that meant that the more I did, the more successful I would be.
Hmm.
And so there was no space. It was just do, 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 do. And then so much frustration when the result wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be.
Hmm.
So when I'm talking about hustle, I'm talking about only doing, no being, and not understanding that there's another element to this at all.
Sure.
So when I come back when I step back and it's like doing is not the only answer,
Mhm.
But there is aligned action, and there is no success without action taken as well. So I want to
Yeah.
be clear about that.
Well, it's also
But
also like if you're just doing to do with no strategy, then you're going to just do yourself right out of
that's
it,
right.
right? Like you'll burn out. You'll do to burn out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that strategy and execution is like 25% of the game, and 75% of the game is getting yourself mindset wise into the right place so that the strategy and the action that you're taking is in alignment with where you're headed.
Got it.
Because if you're constantly taking, and I slip into this often when I'm not thinking about who I
Wait,
want
you're
to be,
human?
and I'm a human.
Oh, hold on. Wait.
Surprise.
Not dogs, not peanut butter, but you
Surprise.
are a human.
No, I just want to say that I'm dogs.
Oh, she's gonna
I
backpedal now.
I don't hate dogs. I'm terrified of them. I used to be a newspaper
You know, you
carrier.
can unblock that. You can do that. You can do an EFT session
I
and get that
know. I'm
unblocked.
working on it. My friends always took me to dog parks so that I could be around dogs. But I was used to be a newspaper carrier, so I have some damn trauma from my lifetime. But anyway, my and my brother has really big dogs, and I let them jump all over me. Okay, that's part of my therapy. Anyway. So I think, but I mean, we witness a lot, and even myself, that I'll have the strategy and I have the best blueprint in the business from Empower. I know this is the steps. I know this is the process. I can get myself so caught up in who's my ideal customer because
Yeah.
I'm in my own stuff internally.
Hmm.
I can get so caught up in, is this the right strategy? Even though it's a strategy that makes sense and that feels really good. But because my mind isn't in alignment with the strategy and execution, I stop myself from taking appropriate action. Or my action is not in alignment with that strategy. It's actually just an action step that I'm taking so I can be like, I'm doing all over the place.
Well, exactly. It's kind of like the action also isn't income producing or needle moving. It's like when kids are not wanting to eat their dinner and the parent is like, if you eat your dinner, you can have dessert. And so they just move the food around the plate. Like you're not eating it. You're just
Yeah,
moving the food around the
correct.
plate.
I'm
Like
being
sitting
smoke
in
and mirrors as
Canva,
we
sitting in Canva for 90 minutes and not actually
like.
posting the thing that you create is not moving the needle.
Yeah. Oh, I was on Instagram. I was interacting with other
Yeah.
accounts.
I was looking for motivation.
Yes, been there. Yes. But that's why I think that mindset takes, or
Yeah.
these unblocking these stories that we have is such an important piece of it,
Yeah. I agree.
because it's your action, your thoughts create your emotions, which create your actions, which create your results. And the biggest thing that I have noticed in my journey, and when I realized this, I was like, oh well, crap, I have a lot more control over my life than I want to admit. But it was just that everything I see on the outside is the byproduct of what's happening inside, on the inside. And
Mm.
that goes for your business, for your career, for your relationships, for your health, for your finances, for everything. So and that's where, I mean, Nick was the one who said to me, Mary, nobody does things, takes action better than you. You're a doer. You do all over the place. She's like, but I don't see any being. And I was like, how do you do
How
being?
are you doing? What are the
Eh,
steps?
what do
Give me
I
the one, two,
do?
three to be.
Yeah, exactly. And this has always been the biggest thing I think in the struggle in business is that you have the blueprint, but business again is very fluid. I mean, we know this. It's like times a changing all the time. Business is not the same as it was in 2020, as we know. So you also have to be adaptable. You have to be
Mhm.
open. You have to be willing to learn new skills. You have to, even though you think that you're really good at one thing, there's always room for growth.
Yeah.
And that is all a mindset game,
Yeah.
right? And one of the best examples I have is I'm classically trained in public speaking. I train other people in public speaking. I used to write speeches for people who would be on stages in front of thousands of people. But when it came time for the TEDx and I got that and I worked with a coach, I remember my ego being like, I don't need this. I
Yeah.
got it. I got it all figured out. But I had to show up to every call that we had together, open and ready to receive the feedback. And of course, the feedback I got was helpful and supportive and helped me just become a next level of myself.
Yeah.
So I think that the mind can always hold us back and help us put and keep us small, especially when it comes to us worrying about other people judging us, which
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. But yeah, so I think it plays such a huge role in the business. But if you don't have strategy and execution,
Right.
then you're just throwing stuff up against the wall and none of it makes sense. And regardless of what you're thinking, it's not going to matter if you
Yeah.
don't have a good added strategy and
Yeah.
execution process, right?
Oh, man, I feel like we're just getting started and we're already coming up on the hour. I do want to make sure we talk about this one thing though. So let's see if we can get it like really tight.
Condensed.
We've talked about EFT a bunch. I've done it,
Mhm.
you've done it, I've taught it, you've taught it. Um, just for the listener, what is EFT? What does it
Mhm.
stand for? How is it done? How does it help? Tell me everything about EFT because I
Okay.
was first introduced to it. This is crazy to say out loud, but like, I don't know, 20 years ago or something when I was going through my
Wow.
eating disorder treatment. Yeah.
Wow. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah. And I used it
Um,
very heavily in Food Freedom University when I was teaching food freedom.
wow, I didn't
Mhm.
know that. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I will say so EFT tapping is the happy addition to my life that I didn't know I needed and that I love so very much. But when I got certified for NLP, it was also EFT, time techniques, and hypnotherapy. Plus, so it's a five things I got certified in. And I really just loved NLP. You had introduced me to NLP. You had brought in some people into our world when I was in the mastermind, and I just thought it was so interesting. And I also thought it was it was such a great explanation of what happened to me when I went through my transformation, because I knew I had the transformation and I didn't understand why, what it was all about. And NLP really has helped me understand that. Plus, Atomic Habits has
Mm,
been huge. And I would say that Gabby's super attractor also helped me, right?
yeah.
That's less
Very important.
science based,
Mm.
but Atomic Habits is very science based. And then NLP, of course, is
And
science based.
sidebar,
So,
NLP is neuro linguistic programming, just for anyone
yes,
who's okay. Go ahead.
thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, the first time that I experienced how powerful EFT was when my coach for the NLP certification did EFT with me one day when I was in my stuff and feeling very low and really worried about this big leap I was taking as I was getting into leaving my full-time work and going into my business full-time. And I'll never forget the way I felt after that. I just felt lighter. I felt like I had this big open space within me to be able to feel really good about what I was doing. It was just so powerful. So, EFT is emotional freedom technique tapping. And so what the way I like to describe it, and I'll try and be super condensed, is um it's basically like you have this sphere of emotion in your body, I like to say. So it's like a rock or the sphere of stone. And I don't know where it sits for you, but it really sits here on my chest and like weighs a lot on my shoulders. Some people it might be in your gut, it might be on the back on your back, whatever, wherever it sits for you, where you just kind of feel like you can't breathe in your body. What's really happening is your nervous system is completely dysregulated and you're in that sympathetic state of just fight, flight, or flee, right? And your body is almost shutting down. And that's where the inaction comes from. That's where those limiting beliefs come from. And I like to say that EFT tapping is like taking a chisel to that stone and breaking it up into a million pieces so that the heaviness breaks up and either the energy is leaving your body completely or if it's just making space for better feeling thoughts.
Mm,
And the other thing that's happening at the same time is that you're actually rewiring your brain at the same time. So you're creating these new neural pathways in your brain. So the first thing you're doing is we said this before that our limiting beliefs have a charge. We're holding onto them. That might be that our ego is trying to keep us safe or whatever it might be. But you're first telling your brain your mind that it's okay for it to release the hold it has on these limiting beliefs, on these emotions. It's safe for you to release the hold you have on these emotions. You are not the emotions. You are a human experiencing those emotions. They are separate from you. So you're actually signaling to your brain that that's what's happening. The other thing you're doing so first, the traditional way of doing EFT is to tap on the negative beliefs and then tap on positive feeling beliefs. So you release the hold that you have on the negative beliefs, and then you are rewiring your brain with new, more powerful beliefs. And what I like, the way that it was described to me, and I'm such a visual person, it was so helpful. It's like you have a corn maze of your old belief system, and you take a plow through that corn maze and you create a new path. And the more you tap on the new belief systems, the more you are creating that path for everything else to grow up around it, and you're creating the more permanent pathway.
Yeah.
So I would say that it's like acupuncture because you're hitting all these different meridian points, but it's free and you can access it anytime.
So
And
wait, when you are talking about tapping though, just explain to everyone, because you've said tapping, you've said meridian lines, and for someone
yeah,
who's unfamiliar, like we're not tapping on the table, we're not tapping on like a
right.
drum.
It's on
So
your
just
body.
it's on your
Yeah.
body. Yeah.
So the first time I heard about EFT was when I was really struggling with money mindset and finances. And a coach said to me, just go on YouTube and follow along. It's easy, EFT. And I was like, I did it. And I thought it was the weirdest thing because it was so out of context. There was no explanation. And I was like, I don't get it. I don't know why I'm tapping on negative things. So I always try and explain that in any tapping stuff that I do, so that you can understand that it's important for you to tap on that stuff. So what you're doing is you're actually taking like 2 fingers, 1 finger, right hand, left hand, it doesn't matter. And you're tapping on these different meridian points on your body. And so the way I say that it's like acupuncture, that's what acupuncture is doing. It's hitting different meridian points on your body, depending on what you're working on. And so EFT is the same thing. And it's around your eye and then under your nose, to your chin, to your collarbone, under your arm, and then on your head. And I think I never realized how soothing all of that
Yeah.
was until I started doing it myself. But it's just lightly tapping because you're just tapping on these different energy points of your body. And it is energetic work. And that's why I think that a lot of people are like, okay, whatever. But if
Mhm.
you actually allow yourself to do it, and some other ways that I do it is I've done tapping on myself when I am beside myself, losing my mind, crying, and I can't get out of my own energy.
Yeah.
I'll start tapping while I cry, while I scream, while I say all these things that I don't want to say out loud. Or when I'm just like starting to feel myself getting really anxious about something that's coming up, I'll start tapping and I'll just say all the ridiculous things. I don't want to do this. I'm really scared. This is really scary. And you say all the things that, like, quote unquote, you shouldn't say
Yep.
because that doesn't make you strong. It doesn't make you whatever, all the stories that you've created around, I shouldn't admit all this stuff. And some of the ways that I've done it with my clients is I had a client who was so overwhelmed by work, she couldn't even speak on a call. And so we just started tapping and I just had her listen to me. And then eventually she could repeat the words back to me. And then eventually she could say it all herself.
Yeah.
And it just really unlocks you. So when we were talking before about how do we move through those limiting beliefs, and I was saying you have to open yourself up in the first place to what those limiting beliefs are. Tapping will unlock you if you're super closed off
Mhm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know
So cool. It's so
I could
cool.
go on and on about
Yeah.
it.
No, I mean, like
I
I
love
said,
it.
I was first introduced to it. I don't know if it was quite 20 years ago, but it was during my eating disorder journey. And at the time, I was like, what the hell is this? Because
Yeah.
again, out of context, it is a little weird. It looks a little weird. It feels a little weird. What you're saying is a little weird. And the fact that you're literally tapping like your eye socket and then under your nose and then your chin and like you're kind of the side of your rib by your armpit, you're like, this is no way. Like, what is
This is so
happening right
weird.
now? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, really, really
That's
strange,
right.
but such a cool technique. And so is time technique, and so is
Yeah.
obviously hypnotherapy. I'm
Yep.
actually I'm doing hypnobirthing right now. I've been doing a hypnobirthing app where I'm listening every day to different hypnobirthing meditations to hopefully bring that in. So I'm
Yeah.
obviously a fan of all this stuff. Okay.
Can I
Let's
say
not
one
hold
more
you back.
thing? really
Okay,
quickly.
fine. Yeah,
And
sure.
I've never shared this with you, but it came up for me very recently when I was reflecting back on hypnotherapy and like healing from the inside out. Back, my dad had sinus cancer 25 years before he passed away. I was in fourth grade, fourth to sixth grade. So rare. Sinus cancer's so rare. They don't even know what to do with that. And a couple of years later, he had what his like iTunes shuffle. And I was going into Boston with him. I must have been in college. And so we were taking the train in, and I was going to my dorm, and he was coming in, and he had his shuffle. And I said, "Oh, what do you have on there?" And it was almost like he had to hesitate to tell me, because what he had on there was hypnosis, healing
Wow.
hypnosises. And so he said to me, it was almost like he was afraid to tell me
Sure.
because it sounded so weird. And he was very religious, Italian man, very, very religious. And this kind of stuff kind of works against a lot of religion. And he was like, I believe that the body heals itself from the inside out. And my father was the medical mystery of, even when he eventually passed, he was still like, what is happening with this man? And I can't help but think that he healed himself in a very big way. So we got those 25 bonus years. And I just think that this stuff feels weird and it looks weird and all the things you just said, but just you saying that you're doing hypnobirthing, it's like, I think there's something besides the fact that I've experienced it myself. It, my dad, he shouldn't have survived, and he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And, and I truly believe that there was a piece because he was open and willing to consider
Hmm.
that there's a way for him to heal himself from the inside out. And so
I
I just
couldn't
had
agree
to,
more. I couldn't agree
yeah,
more. I mean, the mind is so powerful. And, it's kind of with Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced retreats, it's a little bit like the Fight Club. Like you don't really talk about it. So I don't talk
yeah,
about what actually happens in the room because it's not to be talked about. It's to be
yeah,
experienced. But there are some healing sessions and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But what you see is absolutely, it's insane. Like it's incredible and it's so
yeah,
powerful. And to just even be a part of it, um, yeah, I'm
yeah.
like, but that's where it's
And
it's interesting because I think there's a blend sometimes with you're like, oh, sometimes it's far from a religion. Depending on the religion, it's also super close. It's the same idea of like a prayer circle. It's the
that's
idea of
right.
like coming together and pouring love into someone who maybe is sick or something. It's like that's that same power to get that
Yeah,
frequency like potent
that's
into
right.
one thought. So
That's right. That's right.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You'll
Okay.
have to come
Sorry.
back because I'm like, we have so many things to talk about. But I do want to be mindful of time. So before we get into like any just rapid fires or close out, where can people find you? How can they learn about what
Mm,
you do? You mentioned Align and Empowered Project. What is that? Who is it
yes.
for? You also have a really cool membership. And we didn't get to talk about it, but you have relatively brand new podcast, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So tell us
Yeah.
everything.
Okay. Best place to find me is on the Instagram, and it's at Mary.Theresa.Tringale. And I use my whole name. Mary Theresa is my first name. Um, and it's the same thing for TikTok and Facebook, but Instagram is probably the best place to reach me. Aligned and Empowered is my signature program that I
Woo-hoo.
created with Jess, but it is all about figuring out what that be do have is for you. So who do you want to be? What are the aligned action steps, the habits that you're going to do? And then we're going to work on all the things mindset wise. And every day I hold you accountable to getting those habits done and doing the work, the inner work. And we coach you over a 13-week period, actually, it turns out to be. So that's my signature program. We're going to be open up the doors in August for that, with the next
Yeah.
round starting at the end of August. My 10th
10th
round.
round. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yes, I can't believe it. So 10th round of AEP is coming up. I do have a membership called The Club, which is a great place for people who have already, it's really a great place for people who have already been in coaching world and they don't want the intensity of a 12-week program. But I think you should do the 12-week program first and then join the club so that you can stay in the consistent work. But every month we do a workshop. This month it's all about manifestation, and the first month it was all about receiving and releasing the end of winter into spring. You get all access to all the workshops when you join, and then we also do a group coaching call just to allow you to stay in that work with coaching. But again, if you've never done coaching. I highly recommend you join the group coaching program. And then I have my podcast, the You Can Call Me Bossy podcast, and it's so fun. It's an idea I had 10 years ago, and I had no idea how to execute or what to do with it. And now I feel like it's in perfect timing, but it's all supposed to be about how to stop playing small, stop holding yourself back, stop holding yourself back from being the too muchness that you are
Yeah.
naturally here to be, that the world needs you to be unafraid of the label bossy. In fact, let's start owning it. I was called bossy my whole entire life. And I wouldn't be where I am if I let anybody dim my light on that one. So,
Love it.
really trying to, and Jess was one of my first guests. So,
Yay.
to help me kick it off, but I'd
Love
love
it.
for you to join that conversation over there too.
I love it. And on Instagram, Mary.Tringale, Mary.Teresa.Tringale. Teresa has a
Yes.
H.
Yes.
Okay.
The best way to spell it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I'm Sarah in the middle and there's no H. So
Oh,
let's do some rapid fire, but this is not easy for
this
us
is okay.
because,
I'll keep it fast.
yeah,
I know.
I have to ask you this question. Well, hold on. I'll wait. I'll do an easy one first. Favorite movie?
Oh, Grease just came up for me.
Wow. It's
That's so
Rydell
weird.
High. It's Rydell
Right.
High.
Rydell
I got
High.
that. I actually got that wrong during our trivia.
Yeah.
I said
And I did
Ridgeback
have it.
or something.
Something. I was so proud of myself for remembering it in that moment. But that was we used to play it on the TV, and then I would record every word on a cassette so that I could listen to it. And I know every word of the movie.
So funny. What is a guilty pleasure?
Um, The Closer,
Is that a show?
the show. Yeah.
Okay. Are you currently reading something?
I am. Where is
What
it?
are you
It's
reading?
the Mind Magic. And it's
Mine?
about manifestation and like science behind it, and
Cool.
really great. I found him, I can't think of the author's name right now, but I found him on the School of Greatness
Oh, fun.
podcast. Yeah.
Okay. So we ask this to some people, and I'm like stoked to ask it to you because it's really funny. So I say, if you were to give a TED talk on nothing that you're known for,
Oh,
what would it be?
oof. How to manage having a brother who is a Revolutionary
that.
War reenactor.
I knew you were going to say that. So
He
funny.
posted pictures today, and I was like, can I share this so that people believe me when I say that you're a Revolutionary War? I almost took a picture. I'll send you a picture
That
so
is
you could just know
hilarious.
that but there, it's a whole
It's a
world
thing.
over
It's a thing.
there.
Yeah, I know.
Manage that.
$50,000 question. If I were to cut you a check for 50 grand tomorrow, you have to use it in
Mm.
or on your business. You can split it up or use it in one lump sum. How are you investing it?
I am investing it in content support. So content
Cool.
creation, somebody helping me with, I really want to get into do more video.
Mhm.
So, but also helping me repurpose content that already exists, because turns out I've been making content for 4 years and I
Yeah.
have a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think that that would be how I would content,
Work
and then
smarter,
maybe
not harder.
yeah. So I can go to the beach, man. I live down, yeah.
All right. Final question. You know this because you've been a part of it. We named the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe you're always evolving and growing. And as you evolve and grow, so does your business. What is your next personal or business evolution?
Mm. Oh, I love that. So actually, at the time of this recording, I have decided for the first time ever to take a break from social media, because
Ooh.
yeah, and I was like, what a great week to do it. We're recording this over the 4th of July week. So I'm like, I can do this. So there's a trust in that, and knowing that I'm okay, that I've planted a lot of seeds and I've been watering for a long time, and taking a few days off for myself is good. But I'm doing that because I want to spend some serious time focusing on real where I want my business to go, but also the foundation that I truly want to create. And that, so I'm really looking to take a look at the entire evolution of my most ideal client and slow down. And I knew that being distracted by social media in this time would not help that. So that's really, I want my business to become a multi-million dollar business. And I want to make sure that I'm serving my woman the best way, my humans, the best way that I can. And I know that that's going to take me slowing down
Mhm.
and taking the time to really look at what I'm creating here, because so much of what I've created up to this point has been like, let's throw this up against the wall and see what sticks. And for the first time, I'm really building, besides my group coaching program, I have this podcast, I have a book, I have this membership. I have so many different opportunities for people to work with me that I want to figure out how to make it all cohesively work together. And so I really feel like that's next level for me, because I have the space, I have the time, I have the income to be able to slow down enough for all of that. And that's, I would say, huge mindset, strategy, execution
Yeah.
high
I
right
love it.
there.
It's like
So
pulling back on the bow or the arrow, I should
that's
say.
right.
Slow down to
Yeah.
speed up. Cool.
Yeah.
MT, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise, your stories, your giggles, all of it. I love you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank
Friends, if you
you.
loved this episode, which I'm sure that you did, if you got any sort of nugget out of it, make sure you take a screenshot, share it on social media, tag Mary at Mary.Teresa.Tringale. Tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what your takeaway was. And I'm certain, I'm going to throw it out there, if you are interested in something like EFT, NLP, hypnotherapy, anything like that, I'm certain you could slide into MT's DMs and see what that's all about. So
Yes,
thank you, thank you,
please.
thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
as always,
you.
friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.